Thank you for joining me here at 420 Colts Lane. I am your host, Nathan Lowry. Today is Memorial Day, and I just wanted to take a minute to give a shout out to my favorite veteran who unfortunately was killed. That is Pat Tillman. Pat Tillman was a linebacker for Arizona Cardinals, a very good player. Had a lot of respect for the guy when he played football, had even more respect for him when he left the game of football to go fight for our country. Unfortunately, he was killed by friendly fire. But it doesn't change the fact that that guy is a hero. He was a hero. He always will be a hero. I always change my profile pic this day to Pat Tillman. Much love, much respect to that man. And so I wanted to make sure to give a shout out for him because of the day. With that said, I'm ready to talk some football. Let's talk some football. All right, today we are going to be doing the AFC North. And the AFC North was a fun one to look into. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to go ahead and give the fourth place team. I don't think there's anybody in the country that watches the NFL except for in one city who might disagree with this assessment. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Look, the Bengals, they are not in the same league as everybody else in that division. I know that that's hard to hear for Bengals fans who think that every year that this is going to be the year that it turns around. This is going to be I respect that. I respect your well wishes. I've seen it all over the place commenting this year that the Bengals are going to be the team that gets that division. Those are always by Bengals fans, and I don't think you live in reality. Anyways, here's what they did last year. They had 3,290 passing yards. This was with 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. They allowed 4,414 passing yards, 32 touchdowns, 12 interceptions taken away. I'd like to point out that they lost all of those battles. They gave up more yardage in the passing yard than they got. They gave up more touchdowns than they got. They had fewer interceptions than they gave up, every single one of them. Their rushing yardage, 1,682, and then allowed 2,204. They ended up with 13 touchdowns on the ground and giving up 17 touchdowns again. They lost all of those battles. They had 34 sacks and they allowed 37. Again, they lost that battle. So it appears as if they lost every single battle last year. Here's what they did in the draft. With the 11th pick, they went offensive lineman Jonah Williams. They allowed 37 sacks last year. So obviously the offensive line needs to be addressed. That looks like something that they tried to do here. Jonah Williams, again, from Alabama. I really, honestly, when I talk about offensive linemen, I really don't know what to say. It's hard for me to study them. It's hard for me to, I don't know what to say about them. You know what I mean? They aren't the ones that are featured, which is unfortunate. With that said, anybody from Alabama, I feel like is a good player. I mean, that's all they have is good players. So I'm sure that this offensive lineman's a good offensive lineman. Obviously, we'll see as it goes. But it was a need that they needed to address, and sure enough, they went with the 11th pick and got that. You can't hate him for that. That's a good pick. Drew Sample. He's a tight end from Washington. They love their tight ends up there in Cincinnati, and looks like they went and got Drew Sample, tight end from Washington. I don't know a lot about the player, even though I did watch Washington. I know that Washington was a pretty good team, decent team. That they got this tight end here at 52 overall shows that they definitely need to improve on their line. So, Jermaine Pratt, outside linebacker for North Carolina State. Jermaine Pratt is somebody that I wanted to pick up for the Colts. If you go back and watch my Colts prediction, I wanted him. I got him in both of our drafts, but I definitely had him going a little lower than this. But 72 overall, whatever. It is what it is. If they like the guy, they think he's a good player, I could see them picking him up. Outside linebacker, I do like this pick. This is probably my favorite pick that they did in the draft. Maybe a little high on him, but whatever. I believe that this guy will be a good outside linebacker. This will be a good outside linebacker with time. Maybe not right away, but definitely in time. I think he'll play out. Ryan Finley, quarterback, North Carolina State, with the 104th pick overall. I don't think that this guy is going to move in and supplant Andy Dalton for the first job, but he definitely could compete for the second. We'll see how it goes. 125th overall, we've got Renell Wren, I think. Defensive tackle, Arizona State. I'm sure that this is a good pick. Again, I don't know a lot about him. Even though I do watch Arizona State, I should have paid more attention to the guy. He didn't stand out to me. But we'll see how that goes. Anytime people address defensive tackle, it's kind of a gamble anyways, whether they're, especially this late in the draft, whether they end up something or not. I'm sure this is just depth. Michael Jordan, is that right? Yeah, no, I was in a hurry writing these down. Michael Jordan, which is a center/guard from Ohio State. Again, I think Ohio State gets good players. Picking at 136th here for a center guard shows that they're still trying to adjust that offensive line. Most of it was, offensive line, linebacker, and then Trevon, 182nd overall, is Trevon Williams. He's a running back from Texas A&M. Not mind-blowing here to me, but they definitely need to address their running game. I think with 1682 is what they got rushing overall. Could have something to do with their line, could have something to do with their running game, but I think this is obviously just a depth pick. Deshaun Davis, he's a linebacker from Auburn. I don't know much about him. Rodney Anderson, running back from Oklahoma. I do watch Oklahoma. I lived down there for a little bit, so I follow them. Again, just a depth chart pick. Eventually he might be something. I don't think he's going to be a whole lot of contribution this year. I don't think, the draft didn't blow me away, although I do think that they got, I do like Jermaine Pratt, like I said. I think you guys will be happy with him, or the Bengals will be happy with him. As far as the overall draft, it didn't blow my mind. I don't know. They addressed offensive line, I guess. Added a tight end. Their blocking needs help for sure. So maybe that'll bolster some positions. I didn't see a huge amount that they did there. Free agency. They re-signed Tyler Effort. Great re-sign as far as I'm concerned. He's a good tight end. I like him. He's probably my favorite player on the Bengals team. I like him. Cornerback Webb from the Giants. And he's a solid cornerback. Nothing mind-blowing or anything like that, but yeah, sure. I feel like that's a good pickup for them. C.J. Housamon, tight end, as a re-sign. Again, I think that they had they have a decent tight end core. They went ahead and drafted Drew Sample second overall in their draft at 52. They always seem to have good tight ends in my opinion, and so that's solid pickup. Preston Brown, linebacker, is a re-sign. That's what I meant, was a re-sign on that one. The re-sign for Preston Brown here at linebacker. Bobby Hart, offensive tackle, re-signed. Mostly what they did was re-sign players. John Miller is a guard from the Bills. Again, they're addressing that line. So the only two players that they actually brought in, it looks like, is from the Giants and the Bills, cornerback and a guard. So not huge work in the free agency either. Their key losses are Tyler Kroft. He's a tight end that went to the Bills. And then Vontaze Burfict, which is obviously an outside linebacker. He went to Oakland. I like Burfict. I don't think he's ever lived up to what he was in college. He was a beast in college. He just beat the snot out of people. He's a bit of a mean guy, and I think he actually fits in Oakland pretty well. I think he fit here in Cincy as well. But he had a little bit of a chip on his shoulder. I don't think he's ever really been as good as I thought he was going to be. But he's a solid player. I think that they'll probably, they'll probably feel that loss a little bit. I don't think that their defense is is horrible defense, but they're also not the greatest defense either. So anyways, with that said, I think that the biggest issue that they have is still that they have Andy Dalton as their quarterback. It's been a while now. I remember watching him at TCU, and he actually played pretty well in college. I thought he was going to be a good pro. I was obviously wrong at that. He's not a horrible quarterback, but he's also, I mean, as far as he's not horrible, but he's definitely not great. I mean, he's an okay, serviceable quarterback, I think. I mean, there's nothing to hang on to this guy and say, like, hey, we got to keep on throwing this guy money and keep him on his team, yet they still do. I do think that he's the biggest issue there. And again, this is a team that historically has struggled anyways. Yeah, they are not going to... I don't know what the Cincinnati Bengals fans looked at that made them feel like, okay, this is the year, or if they're just being over-optimistic. I could understand that, but I just don't think that they've done enough in the offseason to improve, especially looking at the teams that they play against in that division. Yeah, I mean, again, their run game's good. I like their run game. They were always, pretty good with the run game. I like that. Yeah, I don't see anything that the Bengals have done to make me think that they're going to improve drastically at all. So I think this is still going to be mediocre. It was 6-10. If I didn't give the record, I don't think I did. It was 6-10 last year. I mean, I don't see them competing here. I just don't. So 4th place, that's where I got the Bengals at. Now 3rd place, and this is where this division got really fun. I kind of feel like the 3 rest of the teams are good teams, and I've got respect for all 3. So unfortunately, going through and making the order, you gotta use your best judgment on these and figure out where everybody goes. With that said, the 3rd overall, I have the Ravens. And the Ravens were number 1 in the division last year, going 10-6. Okay, they had 3,558 passing yards with 18 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. They had 3,360 passing yards allowed, with 21 touchdowns and getting 12 interceptions. They won a lot of those battles. They had more yards passing. They did lose the touchdown, the passing touchdown battle there, but only giving up 9 interceptions is pretty good. 12 taken away, so they did win that battle as well. The running game, they had 2,441 yards rushing. This is a very good rushing team. 1,327 allowed. Good defense against the run. Very stout. They had 19 touchdowns on the ground, and they only gave up 11. So this is a team that was very balanced between the run game and the pass game, where most people are definitely heavily on the pass game. I believe that's, in my opinion, due to the limitations at quarterback with passing the ball. Now, obviously, as a running quarterback, he gets the job done, but I feel like he definitely should pick up on the passing game a little bit. I think we'll get into this. But Ravens draft. The number 1, their first pick is 25th overall, Marquise Brown. He's a wide receiver from Oklahoma. I like this pick. I like Marquise Brown. I don't know if right away he's going to be a good wide receiver or not, but I think long term, I like him. They need to bolster this passing game a little bit. He's a smaller, more speed kind of a guy. Yeah, I mean, we'll see how he plays out. Like I said, maybe not right away, but definitely long term, I think this is a good pick. Jalen Ferguson, defensive end out of Louisiana Tech. I didn't watch Louisiana Tech. I didn't follow them. That was the 85th pick overall. I'm sure he can. It says here that he's a defensive end or an outside linebacker. So we'll see how that pick pays out. Miles Boykin, wide receiver from Notre Dame, number 93. He's a bigger wide receiver. I think he was like 223 or something like that. 6'4", 223. I could be wrong about that. But anyways, he's a little bit of a bigger wide receiver. Again, I like this pick. I think he could be a decent wide receiver as well. Maybe not top notch, but definitely a solid 2 eventually, or 3, a solid 3. Okay, Justin Hill, running back, Oklahoma State. That's 113th. Sure, add some depth there. 123rd overall. Ben Powers, he's guard from Oklahoma. Oklahoma's another one of those teams where I believe in their offensive linemen, so I would say this is probably a pretty decent pick here. I mean, at 123, it is what it is. 127 overall, it's Eamon Marshall, cornerback, USC. I'm sure that's a solid pick as well. Dalen Mack, he's a defensive tackle out of Texas A&M at 160. 197th is Trace McSorley. He's the quarterback from Penn State. From what I understood about him, he's somebody that could be asked to play different positions instead of quarterback, or he might end up being, practice squad quarterback or third string quarterback. He is what they have in the other quarterbacks. He's somebody who runs and passes the ball. Maybe not top-notch passer. I think he has some accuracy issues, but he's a running quarterback. So even somebody to have on the practice squad that can do those performances to practice against that kind of a run game / passing game, which is emulated by the other quarterbacks that they have. I kind of think that's actually a smart pick, especially with the last pick overall, to pick a guy who matches the rest of your quarterback squad. Even if he never ends up off the practice squad, there's benefits to the other players in that sense. So, as far as for free agency, you've got RG3. They re-signed him as the quarterback. I think that's smart. Anytime you have a running quarterback with Jackson, he could get injured at any moment, and so having RG3 as his backup. We all know the story about RG3. I would have swore up and down that this cat was a huge star and he was going to be, tearing things up. I'm not sure that he was utilized correctly when he first came into the league, but obviously his talent hasn't played out to become a starting quarterback. He's comfortable in this backup position here at the Ravens. I think he's a very intelligent guy, and I think he's a good character guy, and I think he's probably a very good mentor to these young quarterbacks. He'll probably help out with both. He's obviously, it's a backup quarterback. So Earl Thomas, safety from the Seahawks. At one point in time, Earl Thomas was fear incarnated. He was very, very good at the safety position. He's still very, very good at the safety position, but he has had some injuries. He's getting up there in age, and a lot of times with these safeties that play at a high level, they end up dealing with injuries early on in their career. It kind of changes their style of play, and it limits what they can do. I'm not saying that has happened, but I am saying he's getting older. I do like this pick with Earl Thomas, but we'll have to see going forward how well he plays out. But yeah, obviously not hating on this pick. Earl Thomas gets much respect from me. Mark Ingram, running back from the Saints. Wonderful pick. This is a great pickup. He is getting a little bit older as well, unfortunately, but he had huge production with the Saints, and I think that he. This is a team that wants to focus on the run, not so much on the pass. It is obviously a huge part of their game. They're good at it. I think Mark Ingram fits here well. I think that was a very, very good, pick there. Pickup. Nick Boyle, he's a tight end. It's a re-sign. Justin Bethel, he's a cornerback / special teams player from the Falcons, is what it is. Their key losses here was C.J. Mosley, who is the inside linebacker. He went to the Jets. Zadarius Smith, he's an outside linebacker. He went to Green Bay. Josh Brown, wide receiver, went to Buffalo. Eric Weddle, free safety, went to the LA Rams. Terrell Suggs, outside linebacker, went to Arizona. When you say these names, you got C.J. Mosley, Zadarius Smith, Eric Weddle, Terrell Suggs, and these are good players. Some of them definitely have reached the end of their age. I understand that, especially with we're talking about Terrell Suggs, but these were good players that I think gave them a tough defense. The Ravens have had a tough defense. I kind of feel like they're going to feel the loss of those players. I like I said, picking up Earl Thomas is good. I like that, but I think that they lost more than they gained on the defensive side of the ball. Overall, I think they did pick some really good pickups here in the offseason. Like I said, I do like Mark Ingram. I liked some of their picks at the draft, although I think that some of those picks in the draft are going to be more long-term than short-term. I feel like the Ravens take a step back here. They were 10-6 last year. A lot of times these running quarterbacks, when people start getting tape on them, they kind of step back. Yes, I'm impressed with what he did last year, although I would like to see him pass more. When you're talking about this division, it was really hard to gauge where people fall. I felt like there was a lot of closeness between the Ravens, the Browns, and the Steelers. I don't think that there was a whole lot of separation between them. I feel like, unfortunately, that the Ravens do take a step back because of the losses on defense. That's my biggest knock here. So I'm sure Ravens fans won't agree with that, saying, hey, they were first overall last year. I get that. No disrespect to them at all. I still think that they're a very solid team. I just think that they're in a fairly tough division between the three. Okay, I'm going to go on here now to second overall. Now I'm going to have to tell you right now, this is hard for me. This was really, really hard for me. Really hard for me, and I'll get into that. I had these two teams switched. The two teams that are left, I had them switched all the way up until the moment where I was filling out this paperwork, and ultimately I was persuaded to something that I was trying to avoid being persuaded to. But third overall, I have to take the Steelers here. I'm taking the Steelers here. Okay, so last year, let's get into this. They had 5,008 passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. They had 3,697 against them, 27 touchdowns with only getting 8. You can see that they lost the turnover battle with this. Their record last year was 9-6-1. Not horrible. 1,445 rushing yards with 16 touchdowns. 1,538 allowed with 13 touchdowns. So overall, they did win most of the battles here. Lost a couple. They had 52 sacks. They only had 24 allowed. I didn't realize they're as good with the sacks as they are, but yes, that's pretty good. Okay, the Steelers in the draft, they went and they got 10th overall, Devin Bush. Devin Bush is an inside linebacker from Michigan. I think Devin Bush is going to be a good player. He is, like I said, at number 10. Yeah, I think long term this is a good selection. I like it. Deontay Johnson, he's a wide receiver from Toledo. I don't know much about him. Justice Lane, cornerback from Michigan State. Benny Snell Jr., running back from Kentucky. More of a complement back. Here, Zach Gentry, he's a tight end from Michigan. Sutton Smith, he's an outside linebacker from Northern Illinois. He's a little bit undersized, but he definitely performed well in college, so they're going to see if he can perform here at the high level. If he can perform, I think that there's a lot of upside and a lot of high side there. I do pay some attention to Northern Illinois, living here in Northern Indiana. With Isaiah Buggs, defensive tackle, Alabama, 192nd. Again, he's from Alabama. He's been coached up well. You can guarantee that. 207, Ulysses Gilbert, the third. He's an inside linebacker from Akron. Don't know much about him. 219, Derwin Gray, offensive tackle, Maryland. They were kind of all over the place in filling needs here with the draft. Like I said, I really like the Devin Bush. I think Devin Bush is going to step in, and I think he could definitely be an addition there. I wasn't. Yeah. I think that's what I was looking at. I was remembering the stats. There was something with only picking off 8. I think clearly their cornerbacks and their safeties need to address some of that issues. They did get Justin Lane here from Michigan State. I think he could be a solid cornerback. There was a lot of talk about him. He was on my radar for cornerback for the Colts. Ultimately, I liked other ones better. But at 83, we'll have to see how Justin Lane plays out. They definitely need to take away. They need to get more interceptions, though. That was a big key against them. So, in free agency, they got Mark Barron. He's a linebacker from the Rams. They brought him over. Dante Moncrief, wide receiver from the Jags. Moncrief played for the Colts. I like Moncrief. He's not an outstanding, great player, but he's a solid player who will step in and do what he can for you. Unfortunately, he played for the Jags, and he'd probably be better this year than he was last year for the Jags, but he'll play out good because obviously they still have Ben Roethlisberger, who is a good quarterback. Steve Nelson, cornerback from Chiefs, again, adding corner depth. Anthony Chiquilo, he's a linebacker, is a re-sign. Eli Rogers, wide receiver, re-sign. Dan McCullers, defensive tackle, re-sign. Key losses they got was Le'Veon Bell, obviously, but he didn't play for him last year, so it's not like it impacted that. He obviously went to the Jets. And Le'Veon Bell is a very interesting tale because he is a very talented running back. Very, very talented. I think the problem is in this league, they don't respect running backs all that much. I would have thought Le'Veon Bell would have been like a lot hot fire, somebody to go after. It seems like even the Jets felt like they kind of overpaid for him. He's a really good running back. I just don't think that position gets as much need as it used to. If this was, back in the early 90s, Le'Veon Bell would have been people would have been tripping over their feet to get to him. I do believe he's that good of a running back. I like everything he said about the Jets, even when it came out that maybe, Gase didn't feel like paying him more money. He still came out and said, hey, I'm going to play. I'm just here to play. I didn't like his decision to sit out last year against the Steelers. I thought it was kind of weak. But it seems like there is some issues within the Steelers locker room. And maybe he didn't really like some of the players he was playing with either and kind of felt like, hey, either pay me or I'm going to go because I don't really care for the situation too much. They lost Jesse James at tight end. He went to Detroit. I like Jesse James. He's not the greatest in the world, but he is solid, and I like him. I think, to me, that's a little bit of a loss there. And then obviously Antonio Brown, who is arguably the best wide receiver in the game. He definitely has some diva stuff going on with him, and I think that the situation there with him might have been handled incorrectly. He pretty much demands, you have to have a certain level of clout to be able to demand to be traded. Usually that just doesn't work out. They'll just be like, yeah, tough, you're still playing for us. But Antonio Brown does have that clout. And so the issues that they have here that's been documented with him and Roethlisberger, I'm not even going to sugarcoat this. I find Roethlisberger the least likable person in the NFL. I don't like him. I really don't. I've never liked his personality much, especially some of the stuff that's been in the news about him. I'm trying not to get into that stuff, whatever accusations made versus things that have been proven, but I don't like him. I just don't. I really don't. He's a good quarterback. He's got skill set that very, very few people do. He's a top-tier quarterback. He can throw for over 5,000 yards every single year. That's talent. That takes talent. He is getting older. At first I did have this team pick number one because I feel like people are sleeping on them a little bit. I think that there was a lot of problems in their locker room, and I'm not sure that they addressed the real problem. The real problem, people are leaving this team because they don't like Big Ben. I believe that. I think that that is true. People come out, oh, well, James Harrison likes him, or whoever, this person likes him, whatever, blah, 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 blah. There's a lot of having people's back within football. I respect that. But ultimately, I wouldn't want to play with Ben Roethlisberger. So I don't blame Antonio Brown, even though I think maybe he is a little bit of a diva about it. His new team in Oakland, I think he's going to fit in nicely over there, put up some really massive numbers. All this to say that I think that the Steelers are going to feel some of their losses. I really do. And even though they finished 9-6 last year, and they could finished very similar to that this year. Again, even with the Ravens, I don't think there's a lot of separation between the Steelers, the Browns, and the Ravens. I just don't. I think all three of them are very solid teams, and each one of these teams could switch positions throughout the year. I wouldn't be surprised by any of that because I think that there's going to be a lot of competition between the three. But if I'm looking on paper, I don't think that they did as much in the offseason as I would have liked to see them address some situations. Seems like there was a lot of depth chart added to it, and you still have Ben Roethlisberger peeing people off in the locker room. I doubt that changes anytime soon. I think that's just part of his personality. So for some reason, the Steelers, who for a long time was at the top of looking at an organization and saying from the top down, how do they function? How is it beneficial from their front office on down? And I think that this was at the top of teams that you look at. Obviously, they have a lot of Super Bowl wins in recent history, and it's like, hey, man, this is a really, really good, solid team. Something's changed there in the last few years, which is weird. It seems like Tomlin, who I do like as a coach, it seems like maybe he kind of lets players get away with too much. He doesn't put his foot down enough. I know people said that about Dungy and Indy for a while, but Dungy still had the respect of the locker room. We didn't have a lot of these issues going on. I think that Tomlin has lost his team from that second. Now, could he be getting it back currently as we speak right now? Could there be a massive change of mindset within Pittsburgh, and they're all sitting around talking about, hey, you know what, man? We need to address these issues and get us together as a team. That could definitely be happening. I'm not saying it's not. But I just feel like there is a little bit of a leftover kind of I doubt every player on the team is full-heartedly supporting Ben Roethlisberger in this. Some of them, they still got Juju, which Juju is a very, very good wide receiver as well. But when you lose Antonio Brown, you're going to feel that. When you lose Jesse James even, I think that you're going to feel that a little bit. Because, again, I don't think that they did. They got Zach Gentry from Michigan. He's a tight end. But, none of these guys are, it's not a first-rounder tight end. So is he going to have that much impact? I don't know. Anyways, we'll have to wait and see. Again, just to be clear, I'm not hating on the Steelers. I'm not hating on the Ravens. I think that these are two solid teams that I could easily see winning their division, or I could easily see falling into either one of these positions as well. It was tough to make this decision. That brings me to the number one overall in this division, and I have to go with the Browns. Now, here's the thing, guys. I actually, right until the last minute, was convincing myself not to do this. I was telling myself not to do this, not to get caught up in the hype. We haven't seen enough. I mean, they went 7-8-1 last year, but after I can't even think of his name. Hughes. I want to say Hughes. Is that correct? Anyways, when when they changed coaches, that was a drastic change, and it was obviously a drastic change. I didn't like that coach either. I didn't. So now I'm not upset about the change. I think it was a very smart decision. I feel like Baker Mayfield is the real deal. Obviously, nobody knows going into the season how that was going to play out. I think the biggest thing here is his attitude. I think he fits what the Browns are. I love the Cleveland Brown fans. There is not a team out there that I respect more from a fan perspective than the Browns. I feel like they're kind of the Cubs fans of football. Anybody who can stand by their team for that long and just really hold up like massive support, they do. I love them. I love Cleveland Browns fans, just the way it is. Okay, so with that said, I am one of the people that say, hey man, let's tone it back and let's live in reality. Is this guy really that good? And I don't take it just off of what they did last year and Baker Mayfield and say, yeah, they're going to be first. It was when I started diving into everything else that they did in the offseason. I convinced myself, you know what? Not only were they talented enough last year, I think they had more talent than the record shows. Let's just put it that way. But what they did in the offseason, I think it does propel them to this number one spot. All right, first off, the draft. You've got 46 overall, Greedy Williams at cornerback from LSU. Love this pick. Absolutely love this pick. And I think Greedy Williams fits into Cleveland. I guess he's kind of already made predictions or whatever. There was like this big deal about it. I love it. dude, you guys have players on this team now in Cleveland that are like, you know what? Screw all the stuff that's happened in the past. This does not matter. It's all about going forward. It's all about what we're doing right now. That is the right attitude to have. I believe in the Browns. I really do. Cyan Takataki, outside linebacker from BYU. I really don't know much about him. He was picked in 80th overall, but I'm sure that he's a solid player. BYU has pretty good linebacking core. I think historically they put in some good defensive players at least. At least that's how it used to be. Sheldrick Redwine, safety from Miami at 119. If anything else, I love his name. I think that he is a decent player, though, and has upside there. Whether he's going to step in and make an immediate impact or not, I'm drunk on the red wine, but love it. I do like red wine, so I don't drink much, but yeah, red wine. I like it. Mac Wilson, he is a linebacker from Alabama, 155th. Again, I don't know if this is a starter right away. I think this is a long-term pick, and I do think eventually he'll play out. Again, anybody comes from Bama, you got to trust that they've been at least coached up well, whether their talent level is at that high end or not. I'm sure that most of the time they are solid players, so can't hate on this pick either. 170 overall, Austin Siebert, kicker from Oklahoma. It was a very important kicker to get. I don't know. I'm not big on kickers being taken at 170 overall. Or I guess at 170 it's not terrible, but I don't know. Like, obviously I'm not big into kickers, but if you have a need, you have a need. You got to get them. So from what I understood, he had a high kicking percentage. People were high on him, but I don't know how much of a difference it is between kickers and it's kind of like linemen. It's kind of hard to just gauge. You can't watch a kicker and be like, yeah, he's good, because sometimes they don't pan out. 189th overall, Drew Furbs, outside linebacker from Southeast Missouri State. I hope I got that right. I think I read that right. Southeast Missouri State. I don't know anything about the dude. 221th overall, Donnie Lewis Jr. He's the cornerback from Tulane. Obviously some death picks in there. Free agency. You've got Sheldon Richardson, defensive tackle from the Vikings. I like that, bringing him over there. I like that. I think that defensively, the Browns definitely struggled. I think this is where kind of some of those additions are coming into play in the offseason. You've got, quite a bit. You had a couple cornerbacks. Like I said, you got Reedy Williams added. You got an outside linebacker. You got a safety. You got another linebacker. And then a cornerback at the end of that draft. So they obviously were addressing defense. I think obviously that needed to be. Sheldon Richardson, bring in. I like him. He's a solid player from the Vikings, defensive tackle. Demetrius Harris, tight end from the Chiefs. Kendall Lane, offensive lineman from Houston, dressing that offensive line. Adamius Taylor, linebacker from Tampa. Solid player. Eric Kush, outside or O lineman from the Bears. Then they got Kareem Hunt, obviously, running back who was with the Chiefs. He's got a suspension, I think, to serve, but long term, that's going to be a great pickup for them. And then Odell Beckham Jr., obviously the wide receiver that they got in the trade from the Giants, huge impact. I mean, he's playing with his friend Jarvis Landry. They are going to be a great duo, and then I think that they also have lots of other talent on this team in the offensive side. Obviously, when Kareem Hunt gets on the field, he's going to be making an impact. Their key losses was Tyrod Taylor at quarterback, but they did end up getting Garrett Gilbert, who is the best quarterback in the AAF, and I watched that. I actually really like that guy. I think he's going to be a solid, backup, at least third string. Tyrod Taylor, whatever. He went to the Chargers to be a backup over there. Brashard Perriman, wide receiver, went to Tampa Bay. I like the kid. I think he's a decent wide receiver, but not a huge loss here. I mean, it's not like with what they've replaced him as wide receiver, you're good. You got no problems in the wide receiver position. You got E.J. Garris. Sometimes my handwriting's terrible. Cornerback from Buffalo, or that went to Buffalo. Sorry. And then Jamie Collins, who I did like, outside linebacker. He went to New England. I did like Collins. I think that's going to be a little bit of a loss for them, but they did address a lot of those linebacker needs. Hopefully somebody will, pan out there. So with that said, I do like what they did in the offseason, their additions. And here's the thing is that this might be me getting caught up in the hype. I'll perfectly acknowledge the fact that this very well could be me getting caught up in the hype. But watching them last year, I love what they did. I love for some reason with teams, I feel like you can kind of identify their feeling, the overall experience that they have sometimes, and I think that they're just hungry. This is a team that I cannot wait to see win. Now, with that said, I can wait to see them win because they are in the AFC, and obviously we need to get some, like 2 or 3 Super Bowls from the Colts in a row. We're going to win the next 3 Super Bowls in a row. At that point, then the Browns can start winning Super Bowls. But for now, I want them to have success, and I want them to lose to us. I want them and the Chiefs to kind of come along and lose to us in the championship game, the AFC championship game, and then we go on to the Super Bowl maybe 3, maybe 4 years in a row. At that point, maybe they can kind of rotate back and forth. Where Baker Mayfield gets his Super Bowl in. We take a couple years off. We'll let the Chiefs get one in, and then we start winning Super Bowls again to finish out Andrew's lucky career. And then these two take over, and they just. Anyways, but I do like the Browns. I root for them. They're one of these teams like the Detroit Lions I would like to see have success. I like parity in the league. When I lived in Arizona was when they went to the Super Bowl against the Steelers. Obviously they lost, but I was really hyped up and I really wanted them to. I love to see teams turn it around and become, this. And again, like I said before, I'm a huge fan of Browns fans. I think that I respect the way that they approach the game, and that they love their team no matter what, even when they're losing. I think it's been long enough. I really want to see the Browns have some success. And I love Baker Mayfield. I do. I like his attitude. I enjoy the kid. I think that he is definitely not Johnny Manziel as everybody was trying to make him out to be. He's got a huge chip on his shoulder, but I think that he's got the drive, the motivation, and the focus it needs, the dedication it needs to prove his haters wrong. He will prove his haters wrong. Colin Cowherd is a direct reference to you, Colin Cowherd. Shut up about the Browns, man. Hating. I wasn't going to take them to first overall. I do think that they win this division. But again, I would not be surprised if them, the Steelers, or the Ravens switch places in this. I'm not hating on any one of those 3 teams. I actually think those are 3 very solid teams. And anything can happen, obviously. We haven't seen anything on tape so far to show that the Browns deserve to be picked number 1 overall. But I do feel like it's going to happen. So I went for my feelings with this one instead of the numbers. Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch. This is a team I very much look forward to watching, and I look forward to watching the Ravens and the Steelers as well. Sorry, Cincinnati. I don't ever look forward to seeing you guys play. We'll see maybe if you guys ever ditch the redhead and get yourselves a respectable quarterback. But until that happens. Thank you for joining me here at 420 Colts Lane, and I appreciate you giving me a watch. I appreciate you taking the time and clicking on my video here. If you like what you heard, give me a like, give me a subscribe, and I'll be pumping out some more videos here soon. Thank you for joining me. Look forward to seeing you again.